So, you think about buying some Maxpeedingrod coilovers. I've been running Maxpeedingrods on both of my drift cars for the past almost 3 years now. So today, I want to talk about my experience with Maxpeedingrods and what you can come to expect if you're to pick them up for your car. So the first set of Maxpeedingrods that I ever bought, I bought back in the middle of 2020. I had just picked up my first drift car. It was an E36 318 IS. And I wanted to get into drifting for the cheapest amount possible. So of course, I ended up going with Maxpeedingrods. I think at the time, picked up the coilovers for something like 280 bucks. So I slapped them on the E36, and those were the coilovers that I learned to drift on. Those coilovers made it through about 20 events between the green car and the car that's sitting behind me right now. At the time, I didn't know exactly what to look for in a coilover. Those coilovers were like their bottom of the barrel, you know, just their lowest tier coilover, no dampening adjustment or anything. But between that car and this car behind me, those coilovers made it through about 20 events. And I'm pretty sure that they could have lasted a little bit longer, but Maxpeedingrods hit me up and they offered to send me out a brand new set that had dampening adjustment, and that's actually what the compact is sitting on right now. At this point, I've had about 22, 23-ish events on Maxpeedingrods, and I've got to say, I've put them through a ton of abuse, and I have yet to actually have a failure with these coilovers. But that's not to say that I haven't had my fair share of problems with them either. On the first set of Maxpeedingrods that I had, I was having weird issues with like the front height adjustment collars coming loose due to all the turning back and forth. And then there was a point where I was getting this odd clunking from the rear of the car, and it turned out that the nut that sits at the top of the shock that actually holds the shock to the top hat was coming loose. Thankfully, I was able to catch it in time. Those weren't necessarily catastrophic failures, but they very well could have become catastrophic failures if I wasn't on top of maintaining the car and actually checking over the coilover every once in a while. I've kind of come to realize with Maxpeedingrods that you can't exactly just set them and forget it. You do want to check over them every once in a while, but at the end of the day, that's really what you should be doing with almost every part on a drift car because things are just constantly coming loose. One thing that did really bum me out with these coilovers specifically between the first set and the second set I had is how low the rears go. This is how the rear of the compact is sitting right now, and I mean, it looks low, but this is without any of the collars. This is literally just spring on perch in there, literally as low as these coilovers would go. And if we take a step back and compare it to the fronts aren't as low as they will go right now. I actually have the fronts raised up a little bit. I'd say there's probably another like inch and a quarter that I can lower the front. So if you're looking to be able to like completely slam your car on a set of Maxpeedingrods, I don't know if they would exactly work for you. Granted, this is an E36. I don't know how low they go on other chassis, but if you have an E36 and you're trying to like dump it on the ground, Maxpeedingrods, it might not be your first choice. I've got to say though, the height that it's sitting at right now, I'm not totally opposed to. I prefer more of a functional height on my drift car specifically, but the fact that I have to not run perches in the rear at all to be able to even get it that low is definitely a bit of a negative. The next thing that really bummed me out about these coilovers, I've only had these on the car for maybe 3 months at this point, and they've already started to rust over. I'll throw in a clip right now so you can see what they're looking like. They just don't really have much protection on these coilovers whatsoever. Granted, I have yet to have one of these coilovers completely lock up on me and not be able to adjust it, so that's great, but they just kind of, they look ugly. And then another thing I want to touch on when it comes to the coilovers for this car specifically at least, is that the actual construction of the front coilover isn't exactly correct. If you guys have seen the front shock setup on an E36, there's 2 bolts on the bottom, and then there's a bolt that goes in the side on top. And for some reason, the slot on top where it goes onto the actual knuckle, on both set of coilovers I've had, has always had a pretty decent tolerance and doesn't actually hug where it mounts on the knuckle. So I put the bolt through, nut on, and I have to manually squeeze them together to have it clamp solidly on the knuckle. I don't know if that's just a quality control issue. I don't know if I've just gotten unlucky on the 2 sets of coilovers that I've gotten for these E36s, but it is definitely something to note and might be something that you run into if you get Maxpeedingrods for an E36. Now, like I said before, the first set of coilovers that I had on my green car that I also ran on the compact, they were the non-dampening adjustable coilovers. And I've got to say, they worked really well for the track, stiffened up the car, lowered it how I needed to. But if I were to have them on a daily driver, it wouldn't be the most comfortable ride. They're stiff. Not really bouncy, but they're really stiff. And that can be a pro or a con depending on what you prefer, but it's definitely something to take note of. But keep in mind that that ride quality was with the non-dampening adjustable version of their coilovers. The ones that I have on the compact right now, they have dampening adjustment, and I've got to say, having dampening adjustment totally changed how I feel about the ride quality of these. When I'm driving this on the street, I can soften them up, and it actually ends up being fairly comfortable. When I go to the track, I can stiffen it up how I want and adjust things how I want to make the car drive how I want it to. Now, I know it's been a lot of negatives so far, but I truly do have to give these coilovers some props. like I said, the first set of coilovers that I ran for Maxpeedingrods, I ran on them for 20 drift events, and I wasn't treating them nicely. Like, I was beating the piss out of those coilovers. Now, and I understand that that hasn't been the case for everyone who runs Maxpeedingrods. From what I've heard from people through the forums, online, it seems like you either get a really solid set of coilovers from them and they'll last you years, or they'll take a crap on you in like the first couple months. Thankfully, from what I've seen online though, their customer service is pretty top notch, and if your coilovers take a crap on you early, it's easy enough to just hit them up, tell them that you got a bunk set, and they'll send you out a new set. I'm pretty sure they even come with like a 2-year warranty or something like that. Don't quote me on that. I'll correct myself down here if that ends up being wrong. But overall, from what I've heard, Maxpeedingrods customer service is, they're pretty good. Now granted, I didn't actually have to end up purchasing these coilovers, but for the price, you're actually getting a decent amount. You're getting dampening adjustment, you have camber adjustment, and you have a decent amount of height adjustment, minus the rear for the E36 platform at least. And I want to say that these coilovers are running something like $330. But once again, I'll correct myself down here if I'm wrong. But for the price, you're actually getting a decent amount of features and a coilover that can hold up to a pretty decent amount of abuse. So I guess here are my final thoughts on Maxpeedingrods coilovers. I don't believe they're the end-all, be-all for coilovers. Like, let's be honest, there's your BCs, your KWs, there's tons of other really good brands out there, but they're gonna run you a pretty penny. So who are these coilovers for? I'd say these coilovers are for someone like me. When I was starting out drifting, I didn't have a lot of money to spend. I wanted to get into the sport, have fun, but not have to spend that much money. And I've got to say that these were able to let me do that. They have plenty of adjustment, they have plenty of features to be able to accommodate whatever adjustments you need, like at the track, for example. And the nice thing about these is you're gonna have so much more room to grow. Like, you're starting at like the bottom of the bottom. So you could get in the sport on some Maxpeedingrods, and then as your driving progresses, you can upgrade to like BCs later on down the line. And I would say even starting out on Maxpeedingrods will make you appreciate those higher end coilovers even more. And starting out on something like this is only gonna make you a better driver in the future. But aside from that, I'd also say that these coilovers are just for someone who doesn't have a whole lot of money to spend on lowering their car. If you're in high school, you got a summer job, or you're working a part-time job outside of school, and you just want to lower your car and make your car look good, like, these are the perfect set of coilovers for you. You'll be spending about the third of the price that you would for other coilovers, and it still has all the features you'll need to be able to get all your fitment right, make the car look good, and get it low. But I think that about summarizes my feelings pertaining to these Maxpeedingrods coilovers. There could be some stuff that I missed. I'm not sure. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But yeah, I think that's gonna do it for this video, guys. I hope y'all enjoyed. I hope y'all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.